Michael Jordan, a name not only synonymous with basketball, but also an immortal symbol of willpower, resilience, and greatness in American culture. He is revered as the GOAT, the greatest of all time, with 6 NBA championships, 5 MVP awards, 14 All-Star appearances, and the face that transformed the Chicago Bulls from an ordinary team into a dominant empire of the 90s. He is a billionaire, a global brand, a figure etched deeply into the memories of hundreds of millions of Americans and billions of fans worldwide. But behind that radiant glory, behind the gravity-defying leaps and the immortal last-shot moments, lie wounds that never heal, tragedies no jump shot could ever resolve. The beloved father, murdered on a fateful night, left a void in Jordan's heart that could never be filled. A marriage spanning nearly 2 decades crumbled in pain, stripping away his family foundation. Beyond the spotlight, Jordan often sank into loneliness, turning to long nights at the casino as a way to escape himself. The great physique that once reached the pinnacle of human athletics now slowly betrays him as age creeps in, with injuries, fatigue, and undeniable signs of decline. The crying Jordan image, spread across the world, serves as both a joke of the internet age and a revelation of truth. Even legends fall, shedding tears no one truly understands. Glory elevated him to heights the world admires, but it also plunged him into depths of despair. And the haunting question lingers behind the brilliance: what is the true tragedy of Michael Jordan? If Jordan has ever inspired you, if his silhouette has ever brought you to tears or cheers, leave a tribute to this legend, for this is not just the story of an athlete, but of a man who lived fully in both glory and pain. Michael Jeffrey Jordan was born on February 17, 1963, in Brooklyn, New York, but as a young child, his family moved to Wilmington, North Carolina, where he grew up in a modest working-class home. His father, James R. Jordan Sr., went to Ascent. He'll lover J. Jade, he'll lover J. Jade, he'll lover J. Jade, he'll lover Jade, was a man both stern and loving, never lenient. He demanded discipline, resilience, and relentless effort. His mother, Dolores, worked in a bank, offering a warmer anchor but equally strict in raising her children. Both believed in hard work, convinced that only through sweat and discipline could their children escape the harsh cycle of life. In this environment, Jordan, the fourth of 5 siblings, grew up surrounded by love but also under the invisible pressure to prove himself worthy, to succeed. Yet, as a teenager, Jordan faced a stinging blow to his pride that he would never forget. When he tried out for the varsity basketball team at Laney High School, he was cut. They deemed the 15-year-old too short, too weak, not good enough to wear the jersey of a true athlete. To his peers, it was just a coach's routine decision, but to Jordan, it was a devastating stab. The feeling of rejection, of being underestimated, of being not good enough, carved a deep wound in his soul that would never fully heal. He returned home in tears, locked himself in his room, and collapsed on his bed. His father, James, offered no coddling or comfort, only a reminder that life grants no free opportunities, that if Michael truly wanted it, he had to prove it through action, sweat, and blood. That sternness was both a blade and a flame, forcing Jordan to choose remain defeated forever, or rise and vow never again to let anyone call him a failure. From that moment, an obsession took root in his mind, the obsession that it was either victory or oblivion. There was no room for mediocrity, no escape but to become the best. Jordan began training relentlessly. He woke at dawn, shooting hundreds, thousands of shots, until his hands bled, until basketball was no longer just a sport, but an extension of his body. He played not just to win, but to avenge the humiliation of being cut, to prove to his father he was worthy of expectations, to show the world they were wrong to underestimate him. But the cost was a childhood, with no room for innocence. While friends enjoyed carefree afternoons, Jordan confined himself to the gym. While others could accept a minor defeat, Jordan saw every missed shot as an insult, every small mistake a wound. His father's harshness, a man who rarely praised but often prodded and pushed, left Jordan craving constant validation. He once admitted that his father never easily said, "I'm proud of you," and that absence fueled an insatiable hunger for victory, for the world's admiring gaze. Yet, that obsession not only forged a champion, but also sowed the seeds of later tragedies. From his teenage years, Jordan learned to believe his worth was tied entirely to winning. A day without success was meaningless, a loss was the collapse of his world. Thus, he lived in a state of constant tension, haunted by the fear that a single moment of surrender could lead to being forgotten. Even before stepping into the NBA, Michael Jordan was no longer an ordinary boy. He had become a warrior carrying an invisible wound, a bloodless scar from childhood, that bled throughout his life. That wound would both propel him to heights the world admired, and plunge him into depths of despair only those who live in the spotlight could truly understand. In March 1982, in the NCAA championship game, with only seconds left on the clock, the ball left the hands of Michael Jordan, a freshman at the University of North Carolina, and sailed straight into the basket, securing a breathtaking victory for the Tar Heels over Georgetown. That moment, a simple shot to outsiders, was a defining one for basketball history and for Jordan himself. A boy once cut from his high school team, who locked himself in his room to cry for being deemed not good enough, became a national hero in an instant. America began to know his name. The press dubbed it the shot, a shot that changed the fate of college basketball and the destiny of a 19-year-old. But fame often brings burdens few see. Jordan was still a boy in the body of an emerging star, his soul not yet mature enough to grasp the cruelty of the spotlight. Overnight, he was no longer an anonymous student, no longer the Wilmington kid running back and forth on the practice court, but a symbol for people to idolize, praise, and scrutinize. His peers could still live carefree college lives, but Jordan was surrounded by cameras, interviews, probing stares, and the pressure of a nation craving icons. He was celebrated but also exposed, placed on a pedestal while losing the freedom of youth he should have had. In the quiet nights at the dorm, when the media lights dimmed, Jordan felt the full weight of loneliness. He had achieved his first dream, but that dream was like a gilded cage. With each passing day, expectations piled up: score more points, carry the team, prove that shot wasn't a fluke. That pressure weighed heavily on a young man not yet fully grown, turning every moment of joy into a grueling test. The stern father who taught him that victory was everything was now echoed by the world, only louder, harsher. Jordan began to understand that the price of glory was unrelenting solitude. Friends called him a legend, even before he knew who he truly was. Quiet dinners, endless road trips for games, encounters where people looked at him as a savior, all of it made him feel detached from the ordinary world. Jordan began learning to live with the loneliness of the spotlight. The light illuminated him but also faded the necessary shadows, where a person could rest, be vulnerable, be themselves. From that 1982 shot, he was no longer allowed to fail. Every missed shot, every stumble, risked becoming a question mark over his entire career. Glory came early, but with it came the dark shadow of fear, the fear that without victory, he'd revert to the not good enough boy of his past. And so the obsession in his soul tightened further. Jordan had stepped into the light, but that light not only exalted him, it isolated him. The world began to look up, while he slowly realized that sometimes being seen by the world meant no one truly saw him. In 1984, Michael Jordan stepped onto the NBA draft stage and was selected third overall by the Chicago Bulls. A team long mired in failure, with stands often nearly empty, suddenly found a spark of hope in a 21-year-old. After just a few games, Jordan turned skepticism into admiration. His explosive style, gravity-defying leaps, and relentless scoring left America in awe. From a directionless team, the Chicago Bulls became a focal point, and at the center of that universe was a rookie with a radiant smile, but eyes burning with fierce determination. He wasn't just a great player, he became a phenomenon. Nike came calling, and a historic deal birthed the Air Jordan line, making him a global icon beyond basketball. Gatorade, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, all clamored to tie their names to Jordan. In less than 2 years, he was no longer just an athlete, but a face of pop culture, the idol whose poster adorned every American kid's bedroom. The reason fans packed the United Center. His career soared, wealth poured in, glory overflowed. But at night, when the stage lights dimmed, Michael Jordan was alone in a sprawling room. He began to grasp a cruel truth: the brighter the spotlight, the darker the shadows behind it. Basketball was his salvation, but also the chain binding his life. Day after day, he was swept into a whirlwind of practice, games, and brand promotions. Endless flights, non-stop photo shoots, stacked contract meetings. People saw Jordan shine on the court, but few saw him sit silently for hours in a hotel, his reflection staring back from the window. In college, fame had already made him feel lonely. Now, with the world chanting his name, that loneliness grew exponentially heavier. Each dunk electrified thousands, but in the quiet of the locker room, showering in silence, Jordan heard only the sound of water mingling with his weary heartbeat. His parents and family remained his anchor, but distance, and a grueling lifestyle, made trips back to Wilmington rare. A rare embrace from his father became a luxury. Deep down, Jordan knew he was drowning in a vortex he couldn't stop. He no longer lived just for himself, but for millions who believed in him, for lucrative contracts, for an industry that turned his image into gold. Many nights, he lay awake wondering, was he still Michael Jordan, the boy desperate to prove his worth since being cut from his high school team, or just MJ, a media product, a machine for entertainment and profit? In those moments, loneliness surged, as if all the external light couldn't illuminate the empty abyss in his soul. Glory had saved him from childhood insecurities, but also chained him to a life with no retreat. Each victory was a temporary painkiller, the crowd's applause, a mask for his exhaustion. Jordan began to realize that the higher he climbed, the thinner the air, and the peak of glory was also the loneliest place. That was the price he accepted, but also the tragedy that would haunt him long after. In 1991, after seasons of being eliminated by the Detroit Pistons, their bitter rivals and the toughest barrier, the Chicago Bulls, led by Michael Jordan, finally broke through to the NBA Finals. Their opponents were the Los Angeles Lakers, led by Magic Johnson, a living legend and icon of the '80s. Yet Jordan turned doubts into a triumphant anthem, averaging 31.2 points per game, with gravity-defying scoring displays. He not only won his first championship, but also claimed Finals MVP. The image of Jordan clutching the Larry O'Brien trophy, tears streaming in the locker room, became immortal. The boy once cut from his high school team now stood atop the world, and the world began calling him two sacred words: basketball god. In 1992, the Bulls cemented their dominance. This time, facing the Portland Trail Blazers, Jordan again rose above all. The finals saw the iconic "the shrug" moment. After sinking 6 three-pointers in the first half, he turned and nonchalantly shrugged, as if even he couldn't believe his own explosion. It wasn't just a performance, it was a declaration. Michael Jordan was no longer a star, but a supernatural force transcending all standards. The NBA, America, and the world bowed to his dominance. Then in 1993, the Bulls reached their third straight finals, facing the Phoenix Suns led by MVP Charles Barkley. The series stretched to 6 grueling games, but Jordan did the unthinkable, averaging 41 points per game, a record untouched by anyone. When the final buzzer sounded, the Bulls secured their third consecutive championship, and Jordan once again held the trophy, the glory, and an unmatched pinnacle. 3 years, 3 championships, 3 Finals MVPs, a feat that made him a living legend while still playing. Yet behind that blinding brilliance, Jordan remained human, and in his most triumphant phase, he began to feel the crushing weight of the crown. The world celebrated him, but he struggled to find a place to let go, to be plain Michael again. Ad contracts piled up, media swarmed, fans hounded his every step. He was the center of the basketball universe, but increasingly unable to live as an ordinary person. Amid cheering crowds, he remained adrift, lonely, and still turned to his father, James Jordan Sr., as his only anchor to keep from slipping. James was always by his son's side, not just in the stands, but in quiet nights when Jordan collapsed from exhaustion. His father was the one who could embrace him when the world only wanted photos and autographs. James saw not a superstar, but the little boy who practiced shots in their backyard. After each win, Jordan might be swarmed by reporters, but when the lights dimmed, he'd call his father, hearing the warm voice say, "I'm proud of you." Those words were what Jordan craved as a child, now the only balm for the deep wound in his soul. To many, those 3 consecutive championships were paradise, an unrepeatable golden era. But for Jordan, they also marked the start of a burden. At the highest peak, every day brought one fear: falling. Jordan felt that fear nightly. He couldn't sleep soundly, couldn't stop training, couldn't stop thinking that a single failure could unravel everything he'd built. The fateful 1982 shot had thrust Jim into Tolan, catapulted him to stardom, but those first 3 championships locked him in the invisible chains of expectation. Michael Jordan was called the basketball god, but even gods have moments of weakness. In the hotel room after the 3rd championship, as others celebrated, he quietly left to be with his father, seeking a flicker of family warmth amid the cold sea of glory. His father was the last thread keeping Jordan from the abyss of pride and an insatiable thirst for victory. Unbeknownst to him, that thread would soon be severed in the cruelest way, leaving the deepest wound and greatest tragedy in the legend's life. In July 1993, while America still reveled in the Chicago Bulls' 3 consecutive championships, the most devastating tragedy of Michael Jordan's life struck. James Jordan Sr., his father, friend, mentor and strongest pillar of support, was brutally murdered. On his way back from a business trip, James pulled over on a North Carolina highway to rest. As he slept, 2 young men robbed and shot him, dumping his body in a swamp. Days later, his decomposed remains were found, a scene so agonizing no words could describe it. The news was a fatal blow to Jordan's heart. The father who always sat in the stands, beaming with pride, who patted his shoulder after every game, was gone in a cruel tragedy. In that moment, Jordan was no longer a legend, no longer the basketball god, but simply a son who lost his father. He wept as never before, collapsing as if his entire world had crumbled. The pain of losing his father was compounded by the media and public refusing him space to grieve. They scrutinized every detail, even speculating that James' death was tied to Jordan's gambling habits. Tabloids ran vicious headlines. Did Michael indirectly cause his father's death? The national hero who carried America's pride for a decade was suddenly questioned, facing suspicion from the same public that once adored him. It was a cruelty that shattered the soul. Jordan bore both the agony of loss and the humiliation of slander, standing trial in the court of public opinion. In sleepless nights, Jordan sat silently in his room, staring at gleaming championship trophies that now only reminded him of an endless void. Countless times, he imagined his father walking in, flashing that familiar smile, patting his shoulder and saying, "I'm proud of you." But all that remained was an echo in his memory. Glory became meaningless without the one person he wanted to share it with. The world saw a resilient Jordan on the court, but no one saw him curled up alone, face buried in the dark, trying to stop the tears. His father's death destroyed Jordan's will to play. He began to question what was the point of basketball if his father wasn't there to see it. The shots, the wins, the titles, all felt hollow. In October 1993, just 3 months after the tragedy, Michael Jordan announced his retirement at age 30, at the peak of his brilliance. The world was stunned. A superstar dominating the NBA, idolized by every American kid, abruptly left the stage. His reason was brief: "I've lost my motivation to play." But behind those words was a shattered heart, a soul with nothing left to cling to. Jordan's departure from the NBA wasn't just a sports shock, it was a human tragedy. People realized even legends are fragile, crumbling when they lose what matters most. For Jordan, basketball had been salvation, but now it was a painful memory, reminding him his father would never again sit in the stands. At his retirement press conference, his face tried to stay composed, but his red eyes betrayed him, and the world saw a son carrying the weight of loss. That tragedy marked a turning point in Michael Jordan's life. From an invincible god on the court, he became a flesh and blood man, vulnerable and scarred. From the moment his father was gone, Jordan knew nothing would ever be the same. The death didn't just take a father, it stole the last shred of innocence in his heart, leaving a darkness he could never erase. Jordan left the NBA a broken man, And while the public was still reeling, he made a decision that left the world bewildered. He turned to baseball. It wasn't a whimsical pivot, but a desperate act, a way to escape the painful memories of his father. James Jordan Sr. had dreamed of his son becoming a professional baseball player, once saying, "Michael can swing a bat as well as he shoots a basketball." After his father's death, Jordan clung to that dream like a lifeline to the departed. Each step onto the baseball field was not as an NBA superstar, but as a son trying to keep his father close a little longer. He joined the Birmingham Barons, a minor league team in the Chicago White Sox system. The day Jordan donned the white and blue uniform and stepped onto the field with a bat, reporters swarmed, camera flashes blinked relentlessly, and stands were packed. But instead of cheers, most came to mock, to watch the basketball god fumble in a sport he hadn't mastered. Missed swings and strikeouts became front-page fodder. Critics sneered, "He can fly in the NBA, but here he's nothing." Jordan endured it all. With every swing, he pictured his father. Each rare hit felt like his father's applause. But those hits were too few to hide the truth. He was terrible, far below professional standards. That season, Jordan's batting average was a dismal 0.202, a near disaster. The jeers grew louder, and the image of a man, once the NBA's greatest icon, became a figure of ridicule on a small baseball field. At night after each game, Jordan returned to the locker room, sitting alone in silence. Sweat still fresh, dirt clinging to his bat. He wondered, was he truly living for his father, or torturing himself? His father was gone, unable to witness, yet Jordan pressed on, as if each swing was a prayer. He didn't fear failure, but the scorn and alienation in a world that didn't welcome him cut deep. To many it was a career disaster, but in Jordan's soul, it was an extended funeral. He didn't play baseball to win, he played to hold on to memories, to tell his father somewhere out there, "I tried." The wound of his father's loss never healed, and those months in the minor leagues only deepened it, turning Jordan from an omnipotent legend into a pitiable man, adrift in private grief. Baseball offered no salvation. It gave him only more empty nights, more mocking laughter, and a sense of not belonging. But in that despair, the fire for basketball quietly reignited. From his escape, he would return to the place that made him, the NBA, to once again turn pain into strength, writing the most epic chapter in sports history. In 1995, after nearly 2 years lost on dusty baseball fields, Michael Jordan stunned the world with 2 simple words in a press release: "I'm back." No explanation, no flourish, but enough to shake America. It wasn't just a return to the NBA, it was a signal that a legend refused to be buried in darkness. Fans erupted, Chicago came alive. But for Jordan, the decision wasn't merely about basketball, it was the only way to escape the solitude of baseball, to rediscover himself, and to live on for his late father. Returning mid-season in 1994-1995, Jordan wore number 45, a nod to his youth. Though not at peak physical form, he still made an impact, leading the Bulls to the playoffs, only to fall to Shaquille O'Neal's Orlando Magic. That loss was a wake-up call. A legend couldn't survive without total sacrifice. That summer, Jordan threw himself into grueling training sessions, pushing his body to the brink of collapse. By the 1995-1996 season, Michael Jordan was truly back, not just as a player, but as a basketball god. His Chicago Bulls set a historic record, 72 regular season wins, a mark no one had touched. Back in his iconic number 23 jersey, Jordan became every opponent's nightmare. They stormed to the finals and defeated the Seattle Supersonics, ushering in a new era of glory. Jordan claimed his 4th Finals MVP. Whispers began that no one could reach the heights where he stood. In 1997, the Bulls faced the Utah Jazz in the finals. Game 5 in Salt Lake City became legendary as the flu game. Jordan took the court exhausted, feverish, dehydrated, each labored breath a torment. Yet instead of collapsing, he battled for 44 minutes, scoring 38 points to lead the Bulls to a crucial victory. As the game ended, Jordan drained, leaned on teammate Scottie Pippen to leave the court. That image entered history, not just as a symbol of resilience, but as a glimpse into the legend's dark side. To maintain his aura, he paid with excruciating physical pain. Fans cheered, but few wondered how many more times that trembling body could endure. Then, in 1998, the Bulls reached their sixth finals in 8 years, again facing the Utah Jazz. Game 6 became the epic climax of Jordan's career. With 5.2 seconds left, Jordan executed a crossover that left Byron Russell sprawling, then launched the fateful last shot. The ball sailed through the air, the arena held its breath, and when it swished through, the world exploded. The Bulls secured their sixth championship. Jordan earned his sixth Finals MVP, an unimaginable feat. That moment defined the legend, Michael Jordan, the man who never lost in clutch moments. But as the world roared and Chicago became a sea of celebration, Jordan quietly bowed his head. He knew this might be the end. That shot was not just a pinnacle, but a silent farewell. In the moment millions saw as paradise, Jordan felt an unending emptiness. 6 championships, 6 Finals MVPs, countless records, he had it all. Yet when night fell, he was alone again. Victory had saved him from the abyss of baseball, from the darkness of his father's loss. But victory also became his shackles. Each time he reached a new peak, Jordan felt lonelier, with no one to join him at those heights. As fans hailed the basketball god, he saw himself as a man running dry, a warrior unsure what remained beyond glory, but emptiness. A legend's peak is dazzling but cruel. For Jordan, 1998 was paradise, but also hell. Those 3 years saw his rebirth, but also the silent spread of darkness in his heart, foreshadowing the tragedies and loneliness still to come. After that final shot in 1998, Michael Jordan left the court like a god stepping down from his altar. In 1999, he announced his second retirement, this time seemingly for good. 6 championships, 6 Finals MVPs, countless untouchable records. Jordan departed at the absolute peak. The world mourned but acknowledged he ended perfectly, like a classic tragedy, closing at its climax. For many it was the perfect conclusion, but for Jordan, the silence after the spotlight became a form of torture. 2 years as an executive and part owner of the Washington Wizards couldn't fill the void. He watched young players take the court, heard the ball bounce on the hardwood, and his heart ached. He still trained, played in private gyms, yearned for the sweat-soaked thrill before thousands. Then, in September 2001, at age 38, Michael Jordan announced another comeback. The story thought to end with the last shot gained a new chapter, but this time, it was no longer a triumph, but the tragedy of a legend battling time. In the Wizards jersey, Jordan still had flashes of brilliance. He scored 51 points in a game at 38, a feat that stunned the world. But the magic didn't last. His knees ached, his back stiffened each morning, his body betrayed him daily. The soaring leaps no longer lifted him as before, shots felt heavier, steps slower. Fans still cheered, but in their hearts they knew his airness was gone. Over 2 seasons with the Wizards, Jordan and his team never reached the playoffs. The team stagnated, losses mounted, and Jordan, once the NBA's conqueror, sat alone in the locker room, sweat mixing with tears. He wouldn't admit it, but the pain was clear in his eyes. For a man who saw failure as unacceptable, ending his career with a team too weak for the postseason cut deep into his heart. The world saw Michael Jordan play again, but they no longer saw his airness. He had become a mortal man, defeated by time like all of us. The spotlight now shone not to glorify, but to remind that even legends must bow to age. On April 16, 2003, Michael Jordan played his final game in the Wizards jersey. As he left the court, the entire crowd stood, applauding endlessly. Opposing players bowed in respect. It was a moment of tribute, but also a sorrowful farewell. Jordan waved, his face calm, but his eyes carried a deep sadness. He was exhausted, with nothing left to prove, yet a wound remained. The realization he couldn't defeat his final enemy, time. Retiring twice, returning, then retiring a third time. Jordan proved a bitter truth: even the greatest cannot stop the relentless march of time. Past glories were now mere memories, and in the silence after that final game, he understood some battles have no victors. That was the legend's greatest pain, the pain of accepting he was, after all, just a mortal man. After retiring in 2003, Michael Jordan thought he might find peace in family, making up for the years sacrificed to basketball. But reality was harsh. The glory he earned came at a cost, leaving silent cracks in his family. In 2006, his 17-year marriage to Juanita Vinoy ended in bitterness. Juanita had been a vital anchor during Jordan's busiest years, quietly standing by through long nights of games, endless practices, and moments when he seemed to belong more to the world than to his family. They had 3 children, Jeffrey, Marcus and Jasmine, who grew up in their father's towering shadow but rarely held his hand on quiet afternoons. The divorce wasn't just the end of a love story, it was a shock that rocked America. With a $168 million settlement, it was one of history's costliest divorces at the time. But money was just the surface. The real cost was the collapse of the home Jordan hoped would comfort him after games. The media pounced, analyzing, commenting, turning private pain into public entertainment. Jordan, once invincible on the court, stood in court with a stoic face but a bleeding heart. His children, once his pride, were growing up and stepping out from his shadow. Jeffrey and Marcus tried basketball, but couldn't escape harsh comparisons to the Jordan name. Jasmine chose a private life, far from the spotlight. Michael watched his children from afar, the distance growing. He knew he'd missed their most precious years, birthdays, parent-teacher meetings, simple moments any ordinary father would have. As his children matured, he realized there were family battles he'd lost forever. In the lonely nights after the divorce, Jordan turned to casinos to fill the void. Atlantic City, Las Vegas, poker tables, blackjack, places to escape the silence of an empty home. He was spotted in games lasting until dawn, his eyes tense as if at the free throw line in a game's final seconds. But this wasn't the finals, and no trophy awaited. Wins brought fleeting excitement, losses deepened the emptiness. The press pounced, turning his habit into scandal. Jordan, basketball legend, casino gambler. The public began to see him differently. The man, once a model of indomitable will, was now labeled a thrill-seeker, unable to live quietly without the court's glory. Jordan didn't deny or justify it. In rare interviews, he said only, "I needed somewhere to fill the void." But that void was too deep, and no card game could fill it. The more he lost in his personal life, the clearer his tragedy became. He'd given his heart to basketball, only to find, when the lights dimmed, nothing but wounds remained. His glory became his shackles, chaining him to expectations and scrutiny, even when he just wanted to be a father, a man. But normalcy was never Jordan's fate. In those years, as his family crumbled and nights were swallowed by the shuffle of cards, he tasted the true cost of glory, not just the sweat, blood and tears on the court, but the loss of the simplest things, love, home and peace. After years drowning in loneliness and sorrow post-divorce, Michael Jordan seemed to settle into a life away from the spotlight, appearing only at formal events or NBA tributes. But in 2009, his induction into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame, a sacred moment when the world stood to honor a legend, became the genesis of an image tragedy. As Jordan wept during his speech, his face contorted with emotion, cameras captured every second. It should have been a raw, moving moment, but in the internet age it quickly became a joke dubbed "Crying Jordan." Initially, the image was photoshopped onto defeated athletes, losing teams or scandalized figures. Whenever a sports tragedy struck, Crying Jordan appeared as a symbol of disappointment. It spread like wildfire across social media, from basketball forums to entertainment pages. The world laughed, shared, mocked, and the image became one of the most iconic memes in internet history. But behind the laughter of millions was a deep cut to Michael Jordan's pride. He was used to being called the basketball god, revered for his invincible image and fan adoration. Now, his name was tied to a crying, distorted face used for mockery. A symbol of strength became a symbol of weakness. For a man who spent his life fleeing the feeling of not good enough, this kind of immortality was a cruel blow. He never wanted immortality through his tears. Deep down, Jordan knew those tears were real, proof of a heart that endured too much loss. From a childhood craving validation, to his father's tragic death, to a broken marriage. But the internet didn't care about that truth. It saw only a face ripe for ridicule, a canvas for others' failures. And Jordan, though silent, remained a perpetual jest in the digital world. The meme grew, spreading beyond sports. Politicians, singers, actors, anyone who failed got the crying Jordan face. While some fans saw it as playful tribute, for him it was immortality in the most painful way. In quiet nights, seeing his image mocked, Jordan felt the gap between legend and man widen ever further. He wanted to be remembered for clutch shots, soaring over defenders, and explosive finals moments. But for a younger generation, many know Jordan not from his 6 championships, but from a viral meme. It's an unspoken pain, proof that time and technology can erode even a seemingly immortal legacy. In that irony, Michael Jordan, once invincible, was defeated again, not by an opponent on the court, but by how the world chose to remember him. In 2020, as the basketball world debated legacies and the GOAT across generations, a horrific shock struck Kobe Bryant. The younger legend, seen as Jordan's heir, died in a helicopter crash with his 13-year-old daughter Gigi. The news hit like lightning, plunging the basketball community into grief. But for Michael Jordan, the pain was more personal and profound than anyone could imagine. To him, Kobe wasn't just the next star but a brother, a spiritual son he mentored and loved like family. At the memorial, Jordan took the podium. The man who maintained a stoic, powerful image for decades now had red eyes and a trembling voice. He couldn't hold back tears as he spoke of Kobe. When Kobe died, a part of me died, Jordan choked out. He recalled late-night calls when a young Kobe would ask about every fadeaway, every tiny detail of his game. He said Kobe didn't just want to learn but to compete, to surpass his idol. In that process, 2 supposed rivals became brothers. As Jordan wiped his tears, the world realized the crying Jordan image, a meme mocked for a decade, was now real, raw, and no longer funny. Those tears were no joke but the sobs of a broken heart. The Staples Center fell silent, and for the first time, no one dared laugh. In that moment, crying Jordan became truth. The loss reopened old wounds in Jordan's life. He had lost his father, his greatest pillar. Now he lost a brother he saw as family. Father and brother, 2 sacred bonds, were taken in cruel ways. Seeing Kobe and Gigi's photos, Jordan relived his father's death, relived himself the day James Jordan Sr. was lost. A tragic circle closed, reminding him that even the most precious things can vanish in a moment. For many, Kobe's memorial was a global event, but for Jordan it carved a deep scar in his soul. He confessed it made him reflect on life's meaning, on family, on what remains after the spotlight. We have to cherish every moment together, he said, as if speaking not just to others but to himself, a man who lost too much time with loved ones. After the memorial, Jordan withdrew from the public for a long time. He spent more time with his wife, Yvette, and their young twins, holding them tighter, listening to their laughter more. Friends said he no longer enjoyed talking basketball. Instead, he spoke of life's fragility, of the fear of not having time to say, "I love you." Kobe was a symbol of the next generation, proof that Jordan's legacy lived on. But with Kobe's death, Jordan felt part of that legacy torn away. Videos of Kobe's games, Lakers-Bulls matchups replayed for comparisons, now weren't just sports footage, but reminders of a lost brotherhood. For Jordan it was an unhealable pain, another tragedy added to the long list haunting his life. To millions of fans, Michael Jordan remains basketball's immortal god. But at Kobe's farewell, he was just an aging man, broken by loss, worn down by time and fate. Those tears etched a truth: legends can shatter, and sometimes tragedy comes not from court defeats but from irreparable losses in real life. From then on, when people mentioned crying Jordan, few dared call it a joke. It became a dual symbol, both a laugh of the internet age and proof of the very human fragility of a legend, once deemed superhuman. In that paradox, Michael Jordan's tragedy grew more painful. The world saw his tears, but only he knew their weight. At 60, Michael Jordan, once the embodiment of invincibility, began to feel an enemy he ignored throughout his career: time. The body that once soared above all, endured the NBA's fiercest collisions, now betrayed him daily. His eyes, once sharp on the court, dimmed years of flashbulbs and glaring screens left their mark. Rumors whispered of melanosis in his eyes, a pigment condition that could blur his vision. Jordan never confirmed it publicly, but he told friends, "Not seeing my son's face clearly one day would be scarier than any loss." For a man who lived by his keen eyes on the court, the thought was a dagger to the heart. His knees, once lifting him skyward, enduring thousands of jumps, now ached every morning. Old injuries throbbed, reminding him of the price paid for glory. His back, once arched for immortal fadeaways, now woke him at night with sharp pains. His steps, once a force that shook arenas, became cautious, those of a man fearing a fall. He still trained, tried to maintain strength, but he knew his body no longer belonged to him. Wealth was never an issue. Jordan, the first billionaire athlete, owned mansions in Chicago, Florida, North Carolina, supercars, a private jet. But at night, that wealth only amplified his loneliness. In rooms so vast his footsteps echoed like fate's knock, Jordan often sat alone with a drink, staring into the distance. Friends said he'd sit silently for hours, flipping through old photos, his father smiling in the stands, his young children in their mother's arms, family moments now only memories. Aging wasn't just physical decay, but invisible nightmares. Jordan once whispered to a close friend, "My father's death knocked me down, but aging kills me every day." This wasn't the fear of a boy cut from his high school team, but of a legend who had everything, now facing the truth that he was no longer invincible. Even with his wife Yvette Pretato, and 2 young daughters by his side, Jordan still carries the shadow of loneliness. The age gap with his wife, the generational divide with his children, and past losses make him feel that no one truly understands his inner wounds. In public, he still smiles, attends events, but behind that smile are red eyes and sleepless nights. As he ages, Jordan finds himself trapped between 2 worlds: the world where people expect him to forever be his airness, and the real world where he's just an aging man with aching knees, a stiff back and fading eyes. That gap becomes an engulfing abyss. In his quietest moments, he realizes his greatest tragedy isn't just past losses but the endless battle against time, the only enemy Michael Jordan can never defeat. Past 60, when his body no longer allows him to race with basketball, Michael Jordan found a new anchor in the small haven he built with Yvette Pretato, his second wife, gentle and quiet, always standing in the shadows away from the spotlight. In 2014, when their twins Victoria and Isabel were born, a new chapter opened in the legend's life. The sound of their giggles in a brightly lit mansion at night became a healing balm for a heart long burdened by pain. For Jordan, becoming a father again in his later years felt like an unexpected gift from fate, a chance to redeem some of the time he missed with his older children. Those close to him say Jordan became softer, more patient. The man who once roared and gritted his teeth through games now spends hours on the floor building Legos with his daughters or clumsily playing piano with them. He found joy in simple things: an innocent smile, a peaceful nap beside his girls. To Victoria and Isabel, he's not his airness, not a billionaire, not an icon, just dad. And that stirs his heart more than any arena's cheers ever did. Yet this peace is fragile as a breath. In the dead of night, when his children sleep, Jordan sits alone staring into the void. He wonders, will they ever truly know him? Not the Jordan of highlight reels, not the statue outside the arena, but the flesh and blood man with wounds, fears, and moments of collapse. He fears his daughters will grow up in the shadow of a distant legend, loving the icon more than the fragile, imperfect father. That worry cuts deep, tainting even family happiness with the bitterness of anxiety. Perhaps that's why Jordan seeks to redefine his legacy. Beyond records or branded shoes, he pours his heart into the community. In 2019, he donated tens of millions to open 2 medical clinics for the poor in Charlotte, North Carolina, where he grew up. He wanted kids there, families like his parents once were, to have access to healthcare, to live healthier lives. It's no longer the legacy of his airness, but of a man who knows lack and loss. Jordan also pledged hundreds of millions to scholarships, education, and social justice programs. To him, these projects are a way to give back to life, a way to turn his tears and wounds into hope for others. But even amid philanthropy, he can't escape long silences when the old question resurfaces: will my children truly know me? Once in a rare conversation, Jordan admitted he fears that one day, when he's gone, people will only tell his daughters about championships, sneakers, or the crying Jordan meme. But will anyone say their father sat up at night, fearing they wouldn't understand his love? Will anyone say that beyond the spotlight, he was a man who fell, despaired, and cried like a child when he lost his father? This late-found peace is like a fragile breeze in the storm of his long life. It's gentle but fleeting. Jordan knows better than anyone that he's living on borrowed time, that each day with family is a gift no one guarantees will last. So he clings to every moment: his wife's smile, his daughter's hugs, the simple warmth he never fully enjoyed in his glorious life. Michael Jordan, the man who once ruled the world with iron will, now seeks only one simple thing: that his loved ones remember him not as a distant legend, but as a father, a husband, a man who lived, loved, hurt, and tried his best to protect what mattered most. In that fragility lies a tragic truth: even when he finds peace, the specter of fear and loss lingers, reminding him that a legend's life is never free from its elegy. At 62, Michael Jordan sits in his sprawling mansion, gazing at the sea, listening to waves crash. His wealth is still measured in billions, his name immortal in sports history, his Air Jordan sneakers still coveted worldwide. He remains rich, great, the GOAT, the greatest of all time. But behind that aura, his heart bears unhealed wounds: the loss of his father, a broken marriage, nights mocked by his own crying image, and the freshest scar, Kobe Bryant's death. All form an endless elegy in the legend's soul. Jordan conquered the world, but often lost to himself. He couldn't keep his family whole, couldn't escape loneliness' shadow, couldn't stop his body's daily decline. Basketball, his salvation, also became his shackles, forcing him to live forever as a legend, when all he craved was to be human. Michael Jordan's tragedy lies in this: he had everything yet lost the simplest things. And so his story becomes a reminder for a generation. Glory is fragile, fame never fills the heart's voids. When the lights dim, the cheers fade, all that remains is love, family, presence. Jordan learned this late but strives to make amends, playing with his young daughters, funding clinics for the poor, sharing wealth to uplift communities. In each act, he finds the true meaning of legacy: not championships but resilience and humanity passed on. Michael Jordan will forever be an icon of transcendence, but more importantly, of fragility. That fragility makes his story immortal in American hearts, a hero who soared above all yet fell like any other. Remember, legacy isn't in trophies, but in resilience and heart. If Jordan inspired you, hold that inspiration not just by admiring his victories, but by living fully, loving deeply, and being present for those you cherish, as he, after all his glory and tragedy, truly came to understand. Michael Jordan, the man who made the world look up with 6 NBA championships and the immortal last shot in 1998, carries wounds in his heart that never heal. His life story evokes both admiration and heartache. Behind the image of his airness is a son who collapsed in grief when his father, James Jordan Sr., was brutally murdered in 1993, an event that led him to abandon basketball and flee to baseball, chasing his father's dream. Behind the triumphant smile with the Chicago Bulls is a husband who failed to preserve his family, ending his 17-year marriage to Juanita with a $168 million divorce, watching his children grow up and drift from his embrace. Behind the glamour of Air Jordan sneakers are long nights, sitting alone in Atlantic City, seeking escape in card games. Even his tears at the Hall of Fame induction, the truest moment of a broken heart, were turned into crying Jordan, a globally viral meme, an immortalization through mockery he never wanted. In 2020, when Kobe Bryant, his little brother, died in a helicopter crash, the world saw crying Jordan come to life in its rawest, most painful form, no longer a joke but a silent agony. Today at 62, though still wealthy and legendary, Jordan admits his body betrays him daily, his eyes dim, knees ache, back stiffens, a man facing the fear of aging. These details reveal that glory is fragile, and even the basketball god cannot escape life's tragedies. For Americans, Jordan's story is not just sports history, but a reminder that true strength lies not in fame, but in love and presence for family and community. His eternal legacy isn't the championship trophies, but the resilience to rise after loss, a heart that shares and cherishes life's ordinary moments. If you believe Michael Jordan's true legacy lies in his resilience and heart, not just his championships, please subscribe to join us in spreading that message. Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you in the next video, where we continue to honor legends who lived and fought with their true selves.